Rockefeller Emily. This was Nelson Rockefeller's cousin. She murdered her 2 kids and committed suicide. And if you deep dive into that, there's a lot of people suspect, and there's some pretty good evidence that, and this happens a lot, she was on to what was going on. We know, we've talked about how Illuminati families raise their kids, how they traumatize them, how they basically run MK Ultra programs on them to get them into lockstep with whatever the family's ultimate goal is. We know this is a thing. That's not even debatable. It happens.
Yes.
And that she wanted no part of it, and she saw too much, heard too much, or was part of too much. And of course, like cults, and you're a Rockefeller, where are you going to run? Where are you going to hide? What are you going to do? They're going to shut off all your funds. They're going to run you out of every town. I mean, they are bigger than any kind of secret service or worldwide army out there. They're everywhere.
Yes, they're everywhere, and they have people everywhere. I mean, a lot of people believe that it was Nelson and David who basically helped form the CIA.
They did. There's really no doubt about that. They were the brains behind it, and it was, according to a lot of sources, J. Edgar Hoover, and I know he was nuts and he was kind of crazy, but he was onto them, and they were the ones who put out the Blitz campaign to discredit him, make him look crazy, and turn everybody against him.
Yeah, because there's some people that actually, believe that the whole idea of J. Edgar Hoover being a cross-dresser and being everything else was created by the Rockefellers.
Yeah, because there's no proof of it.
There's no proof of it. They created it to discredit him because he had info on them, and they were worried he was going to come up with it. But others also believe that it was, David Rockefeller working with the CIA and possibly the FBI with J. Edgar Hoover to plan the Kennedy assassination.
There's a lot of evidence to that as well. They wanted him out because the famous speech by Kennedy where he talks about secret societies and how we have to weed them out, and there's all these backroom deals, and there's this shadow government and people involved trying to destroy America. There's a lot of evidence that one of the groups he was talking about were the Rockefellers.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Rockefellers are knee deep in every administration. They give tons of money to every administration. They invite them all onto the Council of Foreign Relations. If you listen to my program on that, there are people from the Republicans, the Democrats, from all over the place, mayors, governors, who are on this council, and it has nothing to do officially with U.S. politics. Like, it is not an official program. They just give it an official name. It sounds really neat. And so when they come out and say, well, the Council on Foreign Relations, they recommend this, that doesn't mean anything.
No, because there's nothing. They're not voted in. They're nothing else. It's just it's a good old boys club. Basically, you have to have money or be in some sort of power. Then you can get in the group and you can help talk about different things. I mean, it's honestly like the CDC. They're really not a government agency. They just have a cool name and owned by the pharmacies.
So according to this article, which is heavily into the Rockefellers being part of the Illuminati, the Rockefellers have divested much of their holdings into places which they control. We talked about that. But nominally, they are not owners of. The Rockefellers' financial power is far greater than the balance sheets would indicate, which means they're hiding a lot of money.
Yes.
Does talk about the FBI and the CIA programs, how they are involved in that. There's also a lot of charges here that they're involved in the kidnapping of kids and child trafficking, that they're involved in that.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of stuff. But most of those rich families, I think, are a part of that.
It says here, for many years, the Rockefellers have been pouring billions of dollars into projects and international groups which are working to bring in a public one world government. The world already has a secret one world government. According to this article, the Rockefellers take part in decisions that affect Russia, China, and other parts of Asia with good reason. The House of Rockefeller has power and assets in all those countries. The investigator of the Rockefellers will find that they have secretly had their hands in the policies and the politics of the United States during all of the 20th century. Decisions and directions this nation has taken are the result of countless orders which the Rockefellers have given their underlings. And that's exactly how it works. If you fund a candidate, it's the same thing with, you hear a lot about these Soros prosecutors. Mm-hmm. That's a big topic these days. All these prosecutors that George Soros funnels tons of money into and gives them directives. This is all learned behavior from the Rothschilds to the Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers are primarily America. When we get into the Rothschilds, you'll find out that's more kind of like Soros. It's on a global scale. But the Rockefellers were basically deemed as part of the Council of the Illuminati to destroy America by means of looking philanthropic, by monopolizing, branching out, getting their hands into all these things. And then everyone's beholden to them. So they all do their bidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, a lot of times it's not just, a lot of people, look at it as like, oh, they're giving away money and they're being philanthropic. But once you're giving away that money, those people owe you in some way. What am I going to get what do I get for giving you this? What favors do I get later?
Well, yeah, because if you look at basically where they even set up their residencies, they're in New York at the Beekman Place. They're all over New York, West 54th Street, Park Avenue. They're in Florida. They're in Maine. They're in Cleveland. They're in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They're in the Caribbean. They're in West Virginia. They're in Texas. So they set up these places all over the U.S. and come in and just funnel money and pour money into whatever they can and then put down directives. And all of this is basically heading because they believe that they're one of the chosen families and they've been, I guess, knighted as one of the top families in the world, picked to be the ruling class, and they truly believe that.
Yeah, they do.
And so even though, let's say, David and Winthrop are all gone, the sons are gone, but they had a bunch of kids, and you don't hear about those kids much. So it seems to me like they've kind of gone back underground, just like John D. was.
And I think they have, and it's kind of one of those things. I mean, it makes you wonder not to sound bad, what's next?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that we have to keep our eyes out on. In fact, Nelson's kids are Rodman, Stephen, Mary Clark, Michael Clark, Nelson, and Mark Filter. Those are all Rockefellers. Then there's Lawrence, Laura, Marion, Dr. Lucy Rockefeller, and Lawrence Rockefeller. Those are all descendants. Those are grandkids, kids, and stuff. Winthrop had Andrea Davidson, Catherine Clouet, Winthrop Paul, William Gordon, Colin Kendrick, John Alexander, and Lewis Henry Rockefeller. And then David Rockefeller, it's got David Rockefeller Jr., Ariana Rockefeller, Camilla Rockefeller, Abigail Rockefeller, Neva Goodwin, David Kaiser, Margaret Delaney, Richard Gildner, Eileen Rockefeller. And it just keeps going on. There's like still 150 or more that are left. That's not even talking about their spouses or any of that.
Yeah.
Again, you go into their businesses and they are like Allegheny Transport Company, Amoco, Chase Bank, Chevron, Chrysler, Citibank, Conoco, Eastern Airlines, ExxonMobil, General Electric, McDonnell Aircraft, Rockefeller Apartments, Rockefeller Group, Standard Oil, Venture Rock Associates. And then you go through their charities, and the charities are even more, and all the buildings they own. I mean, these guys have mass influence. They have massive money. And, they say that money and power corrupt, but I think they use money and power to corrupt.
Yes.
Again, I go back to the grandfather. What was his name? William?
Yeah, William Rockefeller, the John D. Rockefeller's dad.
Yeah, so
Was
I go
William
back to John D. Rockefeller's dad, William, who was, by all accounts, a terrible person.
Oh yeah.
But he set in motion this whole thing. So a lot of people say, well, I thought these Illuminati bloodlines went all the way back to old Europe, to dark Europe and stuff. Not necessarily. Once you hit a certain level of power, you're invited into the group. And we've talked about this with Bill Gates. We think, in our opinion, Bill Gates is one of the latest that we know about that's been invited in. He's kind of the new kid on the block, and he's sort of flexing his muscles. That's why he's become this voice of COVID and the voice of the vaccines. But he's using the same tricks, buying media coverage, giving money to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all these different foundations, and then spreading his money out everywhere into like fake meat, buying up farmland, wanting to shoot space dust in to quell the sun for global warming. All you have to do is follow the money, follow the trail, see what they're doing with their money, and it becomes very, very clear and very, very apparent who they're with, what side they're on, and what their ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
And in America, more than any other family, the Rockefellers, they laid the groundwork for this. And it really started with John D. I think at some point, John D. Rockefeller crossed the Rubicon.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was so into power. That was his main drive. It wasn't even really money. It was power. And he loved the control. He loved the power over people. If you were indebted to him, he was satisfied.
Yeah.
And I think he caught the attention of the old line Illuminati, and they said, we like this guy. They brought him in. I mean, this is me guessing.
Yes.
That they brought him in and said, here's the real deal. Here's what we have going on. Are you in or out? And I think he went in. And then he really passed it on to his sons, who it's very obvious. You listen to their speeches, you read their books. They were very much in favor of one world government. I mean, they basically puppeted Henry Kissinger.
Mm-hmm.
Like they brought Henry Kissinger into the fold, taught him all their tricks, and unleashed him on the world. And Henry Kissinger has been one of the biggest proponents out in the open for controlling population. He was famous for saying, hey, you control the food, you control the population. Take their guns away, tax them to death, and the one world government is coming. There's nothing you can do about it. He's on record saying these things.
Yeah. And I think what it is too is I think also they realized they had two different ways to do it. You had John D. Rockefeller, who just kind of ran his business, did his thing, and kind of stayed out, would occasionally do some things to try and, get his image to look nice. And you had Nelson and David, who Nelson was a lot more in the public eye.
Yes.
And David a little bit back. And now they've hit a thing where, okay, now we're just going to kind of sit back and see what happens, pull out of the public eye. So, they don't notice us, because when you hear people talking about the bad, it's Bezos, it's Gates, it's Elon Musk. Those are the ones they talk about. Oh, the people with money and what they're doing with it. Nobody talks about the Rockefellers anymore. Not
anymore. And they are worth more now than they've ever been.
Yeah. They just stand off in the background. Like,
well, I think again, that's why many, many people believe they are in the Illuminati, because they're standing in the backgrounds, but they're pulling the strings.
Yes, they're pulling the strings. And yeah, they're definitely pulling the strings. And I think Bill Gates is all in, like we talked about in our Bill Gates episode, and none of my opinion on Bill Gates has changed that episode, and except for maybe to think that he's even more evil.
Yeah, no, it's only confirmed that he's evil and ramped it up multiple fold.
Yeah, especially when I see the Rockefellers and how they did it. And it's like, oh, he's doing the exact same thing they were. He's being philanthropic, but he's being philanthropic in a way that works and helps him.
Yeah, it makes him richer, gives him more power, more control.
And makes it look like he's such a great person because he gave this money.
100%. And they laid the blueprint for that.
Yes.
So I think that's enough to whet your appetite. Like, again, we could do episodes upon episodes on the Rockefellers, but We only have an hour.